Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere dry, bone dry. Picture yourself standing under a pale, faded sky in a land where even the rocks seem thirsty. You're in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, surrounded by endless dunes, cracked earth, and sun-soaked silence. It's hot, not just sweaty train in summer hot. We're talking bake bread on the sand kind of heat. If you had ice cream in your hand right now, it would spontaneously cease to exist. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it for you? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking across the arid plains of ancient Persia. Your sandals kick up puffs of fine dust with every step. Your clothes cling to your skin like cling film. The sun isn't just above you, it's on you, like a judgmental cat sitting on your chest. But you keep walking, because somewhere ahead, hidden between the sand-colored homes and gently curving rooftops, lies a miracle. Not a divine one, although the locals might disagree, but an architectural miracle, a solution to the oldest problem in hot places: how to keep cool without inventing electricity 2,000 years too early. You duck beneath a clay archway, step into a narrow alley shaded from the worst of the sun, and suddenly, the air shifts. It's cooler here. Not icy, no, but enough to notice, enough to feel it brush your face like a polite whisper. You look up and see the source of this strange comfort, a tall, slender tower poking from the rooftop like a periscope. This is your first encounter with a bad gear, a windcatcher. It's not fancy, just a vertical shaft built into the house. Open to the sky, but somehow, impossibly, it's catching the breeze from above and funneling it down into the home. A reverse chimney, if you will. One that doesn't send smoke out, but invites fresh air in. Now you might be thinking, big deal, it's a hole in the roof. And you're right, except you're not. See, this wasn't just any hole, it was a calculated hole. The windcatchers were oriented according to the dominant wind direction. Their size, shape, and even internal vanes were adjusted to maximize the airflow. If wind had a favorite doorway to enter your house, these towers found it. Some were simple, just open slats facing the breeze. Others were complex with multiple chambers, cool water basins at the base, and trickling systems to push the air across damp surfaces before it reached the rooms. Humidified, cooled, silent. It was the ancient version of central air, minus the electricity bill and humming compressor. You wander further, slipping into a quiet courtyard. It's quiet here, the kind of quiet that holds heat in its hands. You feel a breeze touch your cheek again, not wind, breeze. Subtle, gentle, like the room itself is breathing. You sit, you listen. Far off, a water seller sings, a donkey sighs. Somewhere behind the wall, someone, here's crushing mint for tea. You close your eyes and the air smells faintly of clay, rosewater, and the long patience of people who refused to let the desert win. Historians still debate when and where exactly the windcatcher was invented. Some argue for Mesopotamia, others claim it was Persia, specifically Yazd, a city so rich in wind towers it still looks like a hedgehog of architecture, but most agree it was the Persians who perfected the art. They didn't just use the wind, they taught it where to go. And here's the odd thing, they didn't write manuals. There's no grand treatise called How to Convince Air to be Pleasant. These systems were passed down through stone, brick, and story. Builders learned by apprenticeship, architects observed the flow of sand and scent. They measured by instinct. The design was always right, not because it was theorized, but because it worked. Imagine that. Your house knew how to breathe because someone's grandfather's grandfather figured it out by watching how smoke left a fire pit. You lean back against the cool stone. It's almost soothing now, the stillness. The breeze continues, slow and reliable. Somewhere in the distance, a market bell rings once. You wonder, what if our modern cities had kept some of this? What if instead of closing ourselves off from the sky with sealed glass boxes, we still built with the wind in mind? Then again, you think, if someone today walked into a job interview and said, I can keep this office cool with mud, air tunnels, and an open roof, They'd probably be shown the exit faster than a pigeonata bakery. Still, there's something lovely in the simplicity, in the soft persistence of wind, in the way these ancient Persians, with no sensors or thermostats, figured out how to turn a tower into a sigh of relief. And now here you are, centuries later, sitting in the shade of their brilliance, quite literally. The fan in your room hums, almost in solidarity with the windcatcher, and slowly you breathe easier. You rise from the shaded courtyard, stretching your legs slowly. The breeze lingers like a sleepy dog at your heels. As you walk back into the sunlight, it hits you again. That heat, the kind that makes your eyelashes feel warm. It's almost funny in a dry-mouthed, delirious way. Your destination tonight is not just the windcatchers, but the minds that noticed they needed them. You wonder what sparked the idea that air could be invited in. You step off the main road and descend into a canyon-like path, cut between two tall adobe walls, and that's when it begins to make sense. These people lived with heat every day, but they paid attention. They noticed how the shade cast by cliffs stayed cooler, even during the worst noon blaze. They saw that the breeze always came stronger near mountain passes, and that caves felt cold, no matter how hot it was outside. And so they did what clever humans always do. They copied nature. If the mountains funneled wind, they built towers that did the same. If caves stayed cool, they mimicked their structure underground. One early prototype you see resembles something out of a Minecraft fever dream, just a big mound of packed earth with holes, poked in odd directions, but when you crawl inside, because of course you do, it's pleasant. You hear your own breathing slow. Of course, it's not perfect. There's a faint smell of donkey, some questionable bugs. But it's at least 10 degrees cooler than outside, and that meant survival. Persians were not just builders. They were adapters. They didn't always invent from scratch. They borrowed, refined, and quietly improved, like taking a hand fan, adding a string, then saying, you know, what if the whole house could be the fan? You come across an ancient bathhouse part buried in sand. The bricks are worn smooth from centuries of steam and sandals, but in the center there's a surprise, a deep shaft rising up into darkness, yet pulling air downward with it. It's another Badger, this one cleverer than the last. Not only does it catch wind from above, it uses thermal pressure to draw hot air upward and out, sort of like your apartment when someone burns toast. Inside, it's quiet. The air smells faintly of lime and clay. You touch the wall, cool, always cool. You look up again. How did they figure this out? There were no weather apps, no thermometers, just observation and generations of trial and error. And yet it worked. You can imagine a family sleeping in here, maybe on woven mats, the father telling the child, shh, you'll hear the wind soon. Just wait. And then it comes, a draft soft as a promise brushing across your arm. Some scholars still argue whether these towers were invented independently in multiple cultures. Egyptians had similar passive cooling techniques, so did early Chinese designs, but few civilizations wove it so deeply into their identity as the Persians did. In cities like Yazd and Kashan, badgirs weren't just architectural features, they were expressions. You could tell how wealthy someone was by the number, height, and style of their towers. Tall ones caught stronger breezes, multi-directional ones adapted to changing winds, and some, because people will be people, were built just to outdo the neighbors. And yet, there's a gentle pride in it. You overhear an elder muttering half to himself, yes, to 4 towers. But does his tower sing when it rains? You walk past a market stall where fans made of woven reeds still hang for sale. The shopkeeper offers you one with a crooked smile. Better than electricity, he says, fanning himself slowly. Electricity breaks. Wind does not forget. There's wisdom in that. A quiet logic that says you don't need to conquer the world when you can learn to dance with it instead. You sit again. The wind catches your hair just slightly. The kind of gentle flutter that makes you forget what time it is. The kind that tells stories if you stay quiet long enough. The breeze grows stronger as you round the corner of an ancient alley, where time seems to coil in the spaces between bricks. You lift your face slightly, eyes half closed, letting the soft current play across your skin. It's like someone whispering, in a language you don't speak, but somehow understand. You pause before a squat mud brick home with an unusual design. A flat rooftop, small courtyard, and, jutting proudly from the roof, a familiar tall structure with wide open slits on all four sides. This badger is different, bigger, more confident. Curious, you step inside. It's immediately cooler. Not just cooler than outside, but cooler than logic should allow. The interior walls are made of thick adobe, their curves soft like melted wax. Each window is small and shaded by a ledge, designed to block the cruel summer sun, but still allow daylight to trickle in. Then you notice the floor slopes downward, barely perceptible unless you're looking for it. The air moves across the room like a quiet tide, brushing your ankles, and in the center of the room, a shallow basin filled with water. It's surrounded by smooth river stones, worn from decades of careful placement. This is not just decor, it's functional. The water cools the air as it passes over it. Evaporation, passive science, a mini climate system made of clay and breeze and patience. You sit beside the basin, dipping your fingers into the water. It's not cold but refreshing, more like a sigh than a shock. From outside, the faint creak of a wooden wheel turning, perhaps drawing water from a qanat, those underground aqueducts the Persians mastered. The water was kept shaded, flowing silently beneath the earth, like the veins of a sleeping city. These systems weren't built overnight. They required cooperation, villages working together, carving tunnels through rock and sand, measuring with nothing but ropes, shadows, and someone's suspiciously accurate uncle. They say one qanat stretched for 70 kilometers, 70, underground, without Google Maps or boots with arch support. Some historians are still baffled by the consistency of the gradients used in qanat. Construction, a fraction of a degree off, and water either stagnates or floods, yet they got it right again and again, and we can't even get a soda machine to give the right change. You lean against the wall, feeling the temperature gradient shift depending on how close you are to the airflow. It's subtle, like the difference between warm milk and lukewarm tea, but enough that your body begins to relax. Imagine living in this house centuries. Had a place where the rhythm of your day is shaped not by alarms or push notifications, but by light and temperature, where a breeze arriving through the tower means it's time to start kneading dough or writing poetry or letting the cat back. And people didn't just survive the heat, they built with it. The walls weren't painted. They were colored with sun-baked pigment. Roofs were flat so you could sleep on them during hot nights, and sometimes when the windcatchers were too efficient, you'd actually need a blanket. In the desert, you get up and explore further. Behind one heavy curtain lies a room filled with cushions, all facing a low platform, a gathering space. Here, stories were told, not for YouTube subscribers, but for children too restless to sleep, or old men too proud to admit they missed their friends. Woman in white linen walks past you, carrying a clay jug. You hear her humming something faint and rhythmical. The melody drifts upward and disappears into the tower shaft, maybe to be carried out into the street, maybe to be held there forever. That's the thing about these badgers. They didn't just circulate air, they circulated life. Sound, scent, warmth, relief. They were part of the emotional architecture of the home. Even the animals noticed. Birds sometimes nested in the cooler shafts. Cats would nap on the edges of the air tunnels, whiskers fluttering in the breeze. Some badgers had small chimes, placed at the top, not for music but as airflow indicators. If they rang softly, the wind was coming. If they stayed silent, it meant, today will be hot. Stay inside. Chew slowly. And somewhere in this delicate dance of adobe and airflow, you begin to feel sleepy yourself. Your shoulders ease. The air, while invisible, feels almost present, like a guest who doesn't speak, but always brings good tea. You close your eyes and listen. The hush of the wind tower isn't a sound exactly, it's a suggestion, a nudge, the kind of quiet that nudges your thoughts gently toward dreams. You wake, or maybe you never fully slept, from the gentle haze that settled over you beside the basin. The house is quiet now, save for the wind, that steady, loyal companion, like an old friend who doesn't ask questions, just stays. Outside, the sky is the color of burnt sugar and the heat has crept back in. You step out cautiously, your feet moving from cool stone to warm sand, like tiptoeing between worlds. Today, you're heading towards something a little different, the open desert. And in that desert, a rest stop, centuries old, a caravanserai. It's a word that rolls off the tongue like a story waiting to be told. Caravanserai, a place for traders, pilgrims, and the occasional camel with commitment issues. You imagine dusty boots, tired donkeys, gossip in 7 languages. From the distance, the caravanserai looks like a low fortress, its walls thick and formidable, a square carved into emptiness. But as you approach, something odd catches your attention. The interior is cool, not just cooler than outside, it's surprisingly comfortable. Inside this remote desert station, with no modern fan, you feel a gentle breeze again. Subtle, persistent. You walk the perimeter. The central courtyard opens to the sky, but all around the edges are wind towers, some taller than others, some still whispering air centuries after they were built. The merchants of old had no time for luxury, but they respected comfort, and staying cool meant staying alive. You find a shaded alcove once used by travelers. There's a worn bench and remnants of old pottery. The scent of clay mingles with something sharp, ice. You look closer and see it. A storage pit, deep and narrow. At its bottom, wrapped in straw, are blocks of, yes, ice. In the desert. You blink twice, but it's real. This was one of those yakchals, ancient Persian ice houses, big domed structures with underground storage chambers. In winter, they'd collect ice from nearby mountains or rivers and store it inside, where thick insulation and natural ventilation kept it frozen well into the hottest months. Some ice was used to cool food, some, more luxuriously, was shaved into. Desserts. But a chunk or two would often be placed in front of a wind shaft. As the breeze passed over it, the air cooled dramatically. You imagine it now, a merchant arriving after days in the sun, collapsing beside that breeze-cooled corner, sipping something sour and sweet. Perhaps rose water with a sliver of snow in it. The kind of detail that would make a modern travel blog explode with envy. But this wasn't about indulgence. It was survival dressed as serenity. You settle into the alcove, and someone offers you a bowl of faludi, a cold dessert made of vermicelli noodles, lime juice, and iced syrup. It's oddly perfect, refreshing. A flavor so unexpected in this sun-scorched place that your tongue sends a thank you letter to your reindeer traveler next to you. An older man with sun-dried skin and a laugh like sandpaper points toward the wind tower above and mutters, "This breeze is smarter than half the people I've met." You both chuckle quietly. There's something sacred about the air here. Not holy, perhaps, but definitely respected. You don't speak over it. You let it do what it's always done. The man continues. "We used to say the wind carried stories. That if you stood still long enough, you'd hear one. You try, you sit, you breathe. And for a moment you think you do hear something, a memory not your own. The faint shuffle of feet long gone, a whisper of an argument over salt prices, the echo of a flute someone once played under the stars, and then just wind again. Historians still argue whether caravanserais influenced the design of roadside inns in other parts of the world. Some say these structures inspired everything from Turkish han to Indian sarai to Spanish posadas. But even they admit, nowhere else combined utility and atmosphere quite like the Persian rest stops. Because here, travelers didn't just rest. They cooled, they decompressed, they dreamed a little, and maybe if the night was quiet and the sky generous, they wrote poetry to the rhythm of that ancient wind. You press your back against the cool wall once more, let your eyes half close and think, how wild that people beat the desert by listening to it. Not with brute force, not by hiding from it, but by making friends with the wind. You leave the caravanserai behind, the taste of lime still lingering on your tongue, and make your way toward the city. Not just any city, but a place where wind doesn't just visit, it lives. Yazd. Even the name feels like a breath of dry air, a city nestled among deserts and mountains, dusted with the color of cinnamon and honey. The streets are narrow, winding like streams that once carried something cooler than water, air. You step into one such lane, barely wide enough for two people to pass shoulder to shoulder. Overhead, wooden beams stretch between rooftops, forming shade tunnels called sabots. They don't block the wind. They guide it. The city, it turns out, is not built against the desert, but with it. Above you, dozens of wind towers rise like the fingers of a sleepy orchestra, each one tuned to a different pitch of air. Some tall and square, others rounded with brick latticework. They look like they could hum if they wanted to. You glance into an open doorway, and there's a courtyard waiting, sunken slightly, with pale blue tiles framing a still pool. Above it, a four-sided badger looms, its open mouths ready to sip the sky. And this isn't a one-time marvel, it's everywhere. Yazd is known as the city of windcatchers. It holds the record for the most wind towers in a single city. They sprout from houses, mosques, bathhouses, schools. If roofs were hair, Yazd would have the most stylish, breeze-friendly haircut in the world. You climb up onto a rooftop with a local. Boy who grins like he knows something you don't. He shows you the view, an endless forest of badgers, all turning their faces toward the invisible visitor from the north. It's quiet. No engines. No honking, no dull roar of air conditioners, just the occasional flutter of a pigeon and the whisper of wind through latticed vents. Each one speaks, the boy says, tapping his ear. But you have to know the language. You tilt your head, half joking, half hopeful, and maybe, just maybe, you begin to hear it. The high whistle of one tower, the low hush of another, some breezes sharp, others rounded, like vowels in an unfamiliar dialect. The people of Yazd understood this language deeply. They even named winds the shamal, the gorich, the door beach with its own personality, season and mood. Some were welcome guests. Others, especially the dust-laden summer gales, were treated more like rude relatives showing up early and staying too long. But all were considered. Part of the city's rhythm. In Yazd, architecture wasn't just about shelter. It was about conversation, with light, with air, with time. The walls were thick to retain coolness, the courtyards open to the sky, but low enough to capture shadow, and the badgers always waiting, always listening. You pass a school, its windows shaded by hand-woven reed mats. Inside, children nap on thin carpets beneath a ceiling painted with stars. A breeze moves through, making a single paper bird spin slowly on its string. No one notices. That's the magic. In Yazd, air belongs here. It doesn't need to announce itself. You sit on a bench by a dry fountain. A nearby vendor sells rosewater in delicate clay jars. You buy one, because that's what one does here. The scent is soft and floral, but not flowery. It clings gently, like memory. You pour a few drops on your wrist and let the wind do the rest. Now it carries not just coolness, but comfort. Some historians say the density of badgers in Yazd came not just from climate necessity, but from pride. Neighborhoods competed. Households upgraded. The city grew upward with towers, like candles being added to a collective birthday cake, celebrating the art of not melting in the heat. And while the science of airflow is well documented now, back then, it was mostly trial and intuition. Still, they got it so right, not just functionally, but emotionally. There's something deeply human about inviting the wind to dinner and designing a seat for it. You rest your head back against the wall, and for a moment the wind shifts, just slightly, and brings with it a note of jasmine. You breathe in, and everything feels light. Forgotten. Forgiven. This city doesn't force you to admire it, it just lets you be cool. You follow the breeze down from the rooftops, weaving through side alleys, until you find yourself standing in front of something quietly magnificent. A house. Not royal, not enormous, just elegant, like someone whispered comfort into bricks. This is a traditional Persian home, a place designed not to impress the outside world, but to soothe the people within it. You step through the thick wooden door into a cool interior courtyard, and immediately your body sighs. The walls rise up around you like gentle arms. There's a square pool in the center, its water motionless except for the occasional ripple when a leaf drifts down. Above, the sky is framed like a painting, and behind, you towering higher than the house itself, is another badger. But this one? It's different. It doesn't just catch the wind, it directs it. You feel the breeze flowing through discreet vents along the floor, tickling your ankles as you walk. It curls beneath your robe. You glance around, searching for the source. And then, notice narrow channels running beneath the house, subterranean tunnels that funnel the air under the floors, cooling it before it reaches the rooms. This is a house that breathes. Every part of it is designed with rhythm. Rooms are placed around the courtyard for symmetry, but also for airflow. The kitchen is tucked into the shadiest corner. The guest room, right under the most active wind shaft. Even the walls are coated in natural materials, mud, straw, lime, mixed in proportions so perfect they could outlast most relationships. You step into the main hall and find it remarkably temperate, even though the day outside is a solar tantrum. The wind passes through without noise, slipping between open doorways and through carved wooden grills. You notice a small curious mechanism, wooden vanes inside the badger's shaft, angled just so. They're primitive, but clever, adjustable even. If the wind shifts, the direction changes with it. It's ancient ductwork, with personality. You lie down on a cool stone bench along the wall. Above you, a high ceiling captures the hot air and gently exhales it back upward. The scent here is impossible to describe, somewhere between clay after rain and sun-warmed linen. Subtle, cozy, a smell that makes you want to read poetry you've never written. Someone has placed cushions along the floor. A pitcher of water sweats on a tray, a fig, a walnut, a plum so ripe it could almost melt. Everything is arranged for the one thing we forget to make time for: stillness. You close your eyes. You hear the wind again. This time not just in the shaft, but whispering through the courtyard leaves. You remember something the old traveler said: "The breeze is smarter than half the people I've met." He may have been on to something, because this breeze isn't just cooling the room. It's speaking to... It knows where to go, which corners to comfort, which curtains to nudge, which tiles to hum across, and it knows you're here. Historians still puzzle over how these homes maintain such consistent temperatures without mechanical systems. Some have tried to model them with software, but the models keep underestimating how effective the designs were. Maybe it's because the software doesn't know what it feels like to sit in a courtyard while jasmine vines rattle softly in a breeze older than electricity. You smile, realizing that this home was not built in opposition to nature. It was built in dialogue with it, a truce of trust, and somewhere in that trust is the real genius of Persian architecture: humility, not the kind that shrinks away, but the kind that listens. First, then builds. The kind that asks, what would the wind like? You sit up slowly, brush a fig leaf off your sleeve, and take one last look around. The house doesn't need to impress you. It's not trying to go viral. It simply is. And in its quiet being, it cools the desert, one gentle breath at a time. You leave the house that breathes behind, a little reluctant, like saying goodbye to a kind stranger who gave you water and didn't ask for anything in return. The door closes softly behind you, and the heat of the afternoon presses down again. But it doesn't feel as cruel now. You've seen what's possible. This time your feet lead you towards something more complex, something bigger than one home, or even one courtyard. You're entering the world of public engineering, of grand design. Before you stands a domed structure, massive, solid, and glowing softly in the sun. From afar, it looks like the husk of a giant seed. Up close, you realize it's part of a whole system, a cistern connected to a wind tower paired with walls so thick they might have opinions. This is architecture in conversation with itself. The badger doesn't just cool the air, it works with water. The design channels: airflow directly across an underground reservoir. The result? Air cooled by evaporation, a natural air conditioner, with no noise, no wires, and no instruction manual. You step down into the structure. It's cooler. Significantly. The silence is deep here, ancient. There's a soft trickle somewhere, so faint it might just be your imagination. The walls are damp with condensation, cool to the touch. You run your fingers across them and feel the centuries stored in their stones. These reservoirs weren't just about water storage, they were thermal regulators. In summer, they trapped coolness. In winter, they held warmth. By pairing them with badgers, the architects created a cycle, a push and pull of air that mimicked breath itself. Somewhere above, the tower hisses gently. You imagine the wind being drawn down through it, gliding over the cold surface of the water and curling through the surrounding rooms. You're standing inside a machine powered by silence. There's a kind of humility in this system. It doesn't demand attention, it just works quietly day after day. Like the best kind of friend, the kind who shows up before you even knew you needed them. You take a seat near one of the open vents where air flows across, your face soft and clean. You think about modern architecture, glass towers, plastic vents, humming motors, and you wonder, why did we stop listening to the wind? A family walks in, their voices hushed without being told to be. The mother pours water from a clay jug into a bowl. The father adjusts a mat in the corner for their child to nap. Even now, this space calms people. It suggests stillness. It offers comfort, like a host who simply opens the door and vanishes, letting you stay as long as you like. And then, a little further along, you find something unexpected, a mud brick wall with geometric holes. Beautiful, intricate, yet functional. These aren't decorative. They're air filters, carved in repeating patterns that slow the wind just enough to remove dust, while still allowing the breeze to pass through, form and function once again holding hands. Some historians argue this combination of wind towers, reservoirs, and dust filters marks the height of passive design in the ancient world. Others say, well, sure, but have you seen Roman aqueducts? And both are right in their own dusty, brilliant way, but what sets this apart is the gentleness, the elegance without excess, the science hidden behind hospitality. You rise, walking slowly along the inner edge of the chamber, and glance up through the central shaft. You can see the sky, bright, open, breathing. A single dove glides across the opening, casting a brief shadow that dances along the curved walls. You wonder how many generations have stood here, grateful for the air, grateful for the water, never once asking for more than what already flows. As you reach the exit, a breeze brushes past your shoulder, as if to say, don't forget this feeling. You step back into daylight, blinking softly as your eyes readjust. The air is warmer here, less protected, more exposed, but it doesn't matter anymore. The wind isn't your enemy. You've met its allies, and now you're ready to meet. The people who built these systems, the ones who carried wind in their minds and soil under their nails. You walk toward a low-slung neighborhood just beyond the city's edge, where modern roads fade and only dust paths remain. This is where the craftsmen lived, the builders, the ones who dreamed in brick and mortar. A boy waves you toward a courtyard, where a group of men sit beneath a canvas shade, sipping warm tea in slow, practiced gulps. At first they don't notice you. They're too absorbed in conversation about wall curvature, breeze behavior, and which type of plaster hums the least, when dry. It's a strange, quiet kind of poetry. One man notices you eventually and gestures you closer. His hands are large, calloused, more sand than skin. He doesn't speak much, but nods toward a partially completed wind tower at the far end. Of the courtyard, you walk over. The tower is just bones right now, wood scaffolding, open ribs and a yawning vertical shaft. It looks vulnerable, like a creature mid-molt, but already you feel a faint whisper of movement. Even unfinished, it's working. A young apprentice climbs the scaffold with the patience of someone raised. To believe every step must be measured not just in distance, but in temperature. He smooths clay into place with a flat palm. No gloves, no gadgets, just trust in texture. You sit on a pile of sun-bleached bricks, watching them work. The pace is slow. Everything about this craft is unhurried, and that's the point. You can't rush wind. You don't build a breeze. You invite it. Nearby, someone mixes mud with straw and crushed lime. He tells you the proportions. Matter more than people think. Too much straw and it cracks. Too little and it doesn't breathe. Everything has to breathe. Another man shows you a small model of a badger. He places a drop of incense smoke at its base, then tilts the model slightly. Murmuring, watch. And you do. The smoke rises, then Shupma slides through the channel and out the top, as if the tower just exhaled contentedly after a nap. These builders aren't loud, they don't lecture. But every action is a kind of sentence. Every adjustment is a whisper of 100 summers they've already endured. And you notice something else. There are no blueprints. The plans. They're in their heads, or in the dirt, scratched with a stick, or passed down from memory and from hand to hand, from wind to wall, and they remember everything, not just what works, but why it works. One older builder, sitting with his legs crossed and his beard like soft cotton, leans in and tells you this. A tower should never beg the wind. It should let the wind come when it wishes. You nod, even though you're not entirely sure what he means, but something about it feels right. Some things don't need full understanding to be fully respected. As you watch them construct another small air tunnel, a wind gutter carved low into the floor, you think about how these quiet minds built a system that lasted longer than empires. The kings are gone, the armies vanished, but the breeze still knows where to go. Some historians speculate that these craftsmen traveled between cities, hired by nobles to build wind towers in places where the air didn't listen easily. Others say entire families specialized in airflow, passing secrets down the generations like sourdough starters, less delicious, more practical. But most agree these weren't just laborers, they were engineers of emotion. They understood that comfort wasn't just about survival, it was about feeling relief, safety, coolness in a hot world. One apprentice scratches a line in the dirt and points. This is where the water basin will be, he says. It's for the air, not for people, for the air. You smile, because they really believe that. You stay there a while, watching the tower rise inch by inch. The wind passes over your skin, a little cooler now, not because of a machine, but because someone knew how to build a house that asked the sky for kindness and got it. By late afternoon, the city begins to hum with a different rhythm. Pots clink, goats complain. A distant flute scratches the edge of the wind. But your stomach rumbles first. It turns out even ancient air conditioning doesn't cancel out hunger. So, you follow the scent of something sweet and spiced, wafting through a narrow back alley that spills into an open garden. And there, tucked beneath a trellis dripping with grapes, you stumble upon an evening gathering. It's not a feast exactly, as no royal pomp, no dancing monkeys, just a summer supper hosted by a local family. A long table is set beneath the wind tower. Soft. Pillows circle the edges. The food is simple but fragrant. Barley stew, cucumber yogurt dip, honey-glazed flatbread, and a plate of chilled dates that look like they've been kissed by the moon. You're invited to sit, because in Persia, even the breeze has manners. The tower above groans softly, its wood expanded by the heat of the day. But even as the sun slips down, the airflow remains steady. Cool. Deliberate. You feel it graze your face with the same casual grace as a cat passing through a doorway it doesn't plan to use. As the meal begins, the conversation shifts to heat. Not complaints, memories. A grandmother recalls the drought of '58, when even the ants walked slower. Someone jokes about a summer so dry the bread baked itself. Everyone laughs softly. You notice something charming. No, one here mentions electricity. Not once. Not because they lack it, but because it doesn't define comfort here. The wind still does. Mid-meal, someone brings out a brass tray with tiny cups of rosewater sherbet. Ice cold, slightly sweet, with just enough acidity to make your tongue do a polite double take. The drink's temperature is courtesy of a small clay chamber attached to the badgear, designed to hold a block of ice. You marvel again at how they stored ice in the desert before. Refrigerators were even a twinkle in the Industrial Revolution's eye. The conversation shifts toward architecture. A cousin explains how her grandfather's wind tower once cooled 5 rooms at once. She draws a diagram in her rice with her spoon. Another. Uncle remembers how children used to sleep right below the wind shaft on hot nights, giggling when their blankets blew away. The wind was the bedtime story, he says, with a smile that folds time in half. You sip slowly, letting the air and words swirl together. Some historians believe the use of wind towers extended to ceremonial spaces, mosques, ziggurats, even ice cream parlors. Yes, Persia had ancient ice cream, or at least something suspiciously similar, called falude. It was served with lime and rose, chilled by ice houses, and sometimes set in shaded alcoves where wind towers added. Just enough breeze to keep it from melting too fast. You imagine a date night in 500 BCE. Darling, shall we go for noodles? That are also cold and somehow dessert? But the greatest luxury wasn't the food, it was the feeling, the relief of sitting beneath a tower that knew exactly how to move air, like a gentle hand brushing heat from your brow. A tower that never needed tuning, charging, or a user manual. Someone leans back on a cushion, belly full, cheeks glowing from saffron and laughter, and murmurs. The wind always knew who needed it most. And for a second, the whole courtyard falls silent. Then a breeze comes, stronger this time. It rolls across the table, flipping a napkin and causing a curtain to lift like a dancer's skirt. Laughter bubbles up again, effortless and kind. Badger hums with satisfaction. You realize then these weren't just climate systems, they were social instruments. They brought people together, designed not just to cool the body, but to invite conversation, stillness, reflection. You weren't just cooled, you were hosted, and that's something modern design rarely considers. As twilight deepens, oil lamps are lit, casting soft shadows on the plastered walls. The wind shifts again, now gentler, now thoughtful. You feel it brushing your ankles like it's tucking you in. You stay longer than you planned, because you always do when the air feels like a lullaby. The night deepens, stars appear, not one by one, but all at once, as if someone flipped a cosmic switch. The dinner gathering fades into soft goodbyes, trailing laughter, the clink of empty cups. You thank your hosts and wander back through the hushed alleys, the stones still warm beneath your feet, but you're not heading home just yet. Tonight there's one more story to hear. You follow a winding path out of town, into the dark shoulder of the hills. A flickering lantern leads you to a small square. Structure, plain, almost severe. Not a home, not a shrine. It was once a prison, not the kind with bars and guards and angry men clanging spoons against steel. This was something quieter, more conceptual. A chamber of heat, a punishment of temperature. You step inside the low doorway. The air is stale, unmoving. And immediately you notice, and there's no badger here, no windcatcher, no shaft, no open roof, nothing. Just a room built specifically not to breathe. The locals call it the still house, and the name fits. The silence is not peaceful. It's oppressive. Your body notices before your mind does. There's no airflow, no circulation. The air feels used, like a breath someone else already borrowed. They say this room was a punishment, not for crime, but for betrayal. A place where the guilty were left not to starve, but to sweat. No chains, just stillness, just the company of their own breath, growing warmer by the hour. You sit. Just for a moment, and within minutes your skin feels clammy, your thoughts fuzzy. You miss the breeze like a lost limb. The strange thing is, no one was tortured here, not in the way modern minds might imagine. No screaming, no iron, just airlessness. The kind that makes you forget how to think clearly, the kind that makes even silence feel sharp. Some historians still argue whether this space was really a punishment cell, or perhaps a quarantine room, or even a failed experiment in insulation. The records are vague and interpretations vary. One scholar wrote that this room was proof that absence of design is still design. You step back outside quickly, gulping the night air. It rushes into your lungs like cool water, and for the first time in hours you notice the wind again, not just appreciate it, need it. It makes you realize how brilliant the badgers are, not because they're impressive, but because they're merciful. You pass a garden where a small tower hums faintly, just one, probably for a modest home. You stop and listen, and in that moment, The difference between air and airflow becomes personal. Breathing is one thing. Breathing comfortably is another. You think about that prisoner, real or imagined, left to sit in a still room, the breeze outside just inches away but unreachable. That kind of punishment doesn't scream, it whispers, and sometimes that's worse. Now you understand something deeper. The Badgers didn't just cool people, they freed them. From staleness, from stagnation, from sitting in silence and hearing only your own sweat. And that, well, that's not nothing. You walk back to town with a fresh respect for the small sounds, the flap of a curtain, the whir of a bug riding the current, the hush of a home exhaling. The Badgers are waiting all around you, quiet sentinels, breathing still. Morning comes like a whisper. No alarms, no rooster, just the slow stretch of pale sunlight pooling on your windowsill. You wake to birdsong and, of course, the gentle sigh of wind slipping through the Badger. It's your last full day in Persia, and you've decided to visit a curious little footnote in this otherwise breezy history, a group of travelers who came here many centuries ago to see the windcatchers for themselves, and left in a state of both awe and frustration. The Romans, yes. Those Romans, the ones with aqueducts and sandals and a fondness for declaring themselves inventors of everything. They heard rumors of Persian architecture that cooled rooms without fountains or slaves fanning grapes on trays. Naturally they had to see it. You make your way to an old administrative villa on the city's edge, where the ruins of an early ambassadorial guest house remain. You imagine the Romans arriving here, sand in their togas, egos inflated, sandals slightly too tight, and stepping inside a house that was, somehow, colder than their marble villas back home. Not cold like marble, cold like logic applied without bravado. One Roman scribe, according to scattered historical gossip and possibly exaggerated storytelling, reportedly exclaimed, "By Jupiter, the wind here is cleverer than my brother-in-law." You sit where they might have sat, on a low bench beside a channel of cool air funneling up from a shaded duct. The system wasn't even trying to impress them. It simply did what it was designed to do, which of course annoyed the Romans to no end. They tried to copy it. Records suggest they took notes, drew diagrams, and even attempted to recreate Badgers in parts of Syria and Egypt. But something was always missing. Maybe it was the local materials, maybe it was the placement, maybe, just maybe. It was the humility that made it all work. The Persians built for climate, the Romans built for glory. Historians still debate this. Some say Badgers appeared in Roman villas during the later empire. Others insist what the Romans built were mere ventilation shafts in fancy robes. One frustrated architect supposedly declared, "The wind in Rome simply does not cooperate." You smile at that. The wind apparently has favorites. Walking deeper into the site, you find fragments of Latin script carved beside Persian poetry. It's a strange overlap. Concrete meets clay, ego meets element. And yet, you imagine there was mutual admiration here. The Romans respected engineering, and the Persians, they respected listening. You find a surviving room, partially restored, with remnants of both cultures layered atop one another. A Roman archway opens into a Persian courtyard, and in the corner, a wind tower clearly added after the rest. Graft of genius. The room is cool, not chilling, not showy, just right. You sit down and the breeze joins you. It doesn't care who you are, Roman, Persian, tourist, dreamer. It flows for anyone who builds with kindness in mind. You think about how many ideas get lost in translation, how many cultures try to borrow brilliance without understanding its roots, and yet even failure can be beautiful. Even imitation has value when it's made with awe. The wind doesn't remember the Romans, but the stones do, and today so do you. Night falls again gently, the kind of night that doesn't announce itself but arrives like a friend who lets themselves in without knocking. The sky hangs heavy with stars, and you, now accustomed to following the breeze, feel it tug softly at your sleeves, not with urgency, just curiosity. You follow it, past courtyards and lamplit alleys, past closed shutters, and the muted murmur of families finishing their meals. The city is drowsy, but you're awake, and the breeze seems to know. It leads you to a garden on the hill, small, overgrown, almost forgotten. There, under a crooked fig tree, sits an old man, cross-legged on a rug, a worn satchel beside him, and a clay cup balanced on his knee. He looks up and nods like he's been expecting you. "You're the one listening to the wind," he says simply. You smile. You don't correct him. He gestures beside him, and you sit. The ground is still warm. The wind moves through the trees above, making the leaves sound like distant applause. The man takes a sip from his cup and begins to speak. Not like a lecture, not like a performance, just the slow, spiraling rhythm of someone who knows the night is long and the wind has good ears. "They say the wind here never sleeps," he begins, "but it does dream, and sometimes it whispers those dreams to people who listen closely enough." He tells you stories of winds with names and moods, of a breeze that once saved a child from fever by cooling her room for 7 nights straight, of a draft that moved through the same alley every spring, no matter how the buildings changed. You ask him if any of that's true. He shrugs. "Truth and wind," he says, "both move sideways, and you believe him." He tells you of Geo-Gem, the night winds, the ones that move softer than silence, the ones that sneak through sleeping cities and collect secrets. If you breathe deeply on a still night, he says, you might hear a memory that isn't yours. You both fall quiet. The wind stirs again, this time cooler, threading through the trees and into the badgers below. The city breathes just a little deeper. He tells you how his grandfather used to place copper bowls of water at the base of the wind towers, not to cool the air but to make it sing. When the breeze hit just right, it would create a low hum, like the tower was humming a lullaby to the house. "People say it was an accident," the old man says, "but I think the wind was just lonely." You laugh quietly. The idea of lonely wind is absurd, but also somehow perfect. Some historians speculate that the old wind songs were real, that certain tower designs produced natural resonance tones. Others insist it's folklore. But even now, standing in that garden, you can almost hear it. A soft vibration, or maybe just the night humming with memory. You ask the man if people still build badgers like they used to. He sighs. "Not often," he says. "Now they build for speed, for scale, for shine." He looks out over the rooftops where modern satellite dishes perch like awkward birds beside ancient towers. "But the wind doesn't care about time," he adds. "It only visits where it's welcomed." You sit together in silence. The fig tree rustles above. A breeze lifts the old man's sleeve and he smiles, almost bashfully, like an old friend just tapped him on the arm. "It's telling me to rest," he says, and with that, he gathers his things slowly and rises. He leaves you in the garden without fanfare. No goodbye, no final thought, just a nod, and the sound of wind following him down the hill. You stay. And now, with nothing but stars above and the hush of the badgers below, you think about the strange intimacy of a breeze that's touched everyone, everywhere, forever, and yet still feels personal. You close your eyes, just for a second, and the wind, still curious, gently brushes your cheek. You wake late the next morning, the breeze already at work, smoothing the corners of your dreams, brushing against your pillow like it's making the bed for you. Another quiet gift. Today, you head into the heart of the city, not to see what was built, but to witness what was lost. The modern skyline has crept in, not aggressively but steadily. Concrete boxes, reflective glass, new towers that reach higher, but somehow say less. Many of the badgers are still standing, but not all of them breathe anymore. You make your way to a rooftop cafe nestled between old clay walls and a freshly painted apartment block. The waitress brings you saffron tea and points to a leaning tower in the distance, its vents filled with bricks, its top half chipped away by time and neglect. "It used to sing," she says without irony. She doesn't mean music, she means airflow, the hush, the hum, the whisper of clean air gliding through corridors. Now it's just a shape. All across the city, the same story repeats. Some towers were torn down to make way for satellite dishes. Others were sealed off for air conditioning units. A few remain as museum pieces, preserved but disconnected, like a seashell without the sea. Still, a few survived, and one of them, tucked behind a school library, is breathing again. You visit it in the afternoon. It's been restored by students and teachers, quietly, without any viral announcements or hashtags. Just bricks, lime, and hope. They opened the vents, rebuilt the shaft, cleaned out the nesting birds, and now the breeze is back. A small girl sits cross-legged on a mat beneath it, reading a book. Her hair flutters. You smile. The school's headmaster tells you they almost lost the tower, but someone insisted air this honest shouldn't be buried. He laughs. We've got Wi-Fi now too, but some days the tower is better at keeping the kids awake. You walk around the base of the Badgir. The clay is warm, but the air that flows through it is not. It's soft and real and distinctly alive. You run your hand along the bricks and feel the tiniest vibration, just a trace of motion, like the tower is quietly remembering how to do what it was born for. Some engineers have tried to modernize the Badgir, adding solar panels and fans, automating the angle of the vents. It's promising, but not the same. Efficiency might be higher. But the poetry is harder to replicate. Historians are cautiously optimistic. Climate-responsive design is making a comeback. The conversation about sustainability has led people to look backward, to traditions that already knew how to coexist with the environment without consuming it. You think about the towers that were silenced, the ones that cracked, crumbled, or got buried beneath blueprints and bureaucracy. But then you remember this school, this quiet breeze, this little girl, reading peacefully under the care of something. Ancient and kind, not gone, not forgotten. You sit for a while in the shadow of the breathing wall, and for the first time you realize something. The Badgirs aren't relics, they're habits, ways of building, ways of thinking, ways of being. And like all good habits, they can return. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the wind pass over you. Evening settles in, not like a curtain falling, but like a hand gently dimming the light. You wander slowly through the older quarters of the city, guided more by instinct than by any map. Your feet follow the breeze, because now you trust it, more than directions. It leads you to a courtyard you've never seen before. Narrow doorway, simple walls, ivy crawling up the side, like it's whispering secrets to the bricks. Inside is a small architecture studio, barely marked, just a wooden sign that says, "For the wind." You step inside, and the space is full of sketches. Pinned on every surface are drawings, diagrams, models, not flashy or overly modern. These are studies, the work of someone who wants to understand how a thing breathes before trying to make it prettier. A woman greets you, sleeves rolled up, charcoal smudged across her thumb. She smiles, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, and says, "Welcome. Are you here to listen too?" You nod, and she leads you toward the center of the room, where a new model is taking shape. It's not quite a windcatcher in the traditional sense, more angular, modular, but unmistakably rooted in what came before. This one's going to a school in southern Iran, she says. We added adjustable louvers, a misting chamber, and a way to trap night air for morning release. She pauses. But the important thing is, it listens. That's the whole point. The wind should never be forced. You glance at the sketches pinned nearby, notes about airflow curves, angles of morning sun, even diagrams of how local birds build their nests to optimize temperature. It's more than architecture. It's relationship. Some architects today call it climate empathy, a return to design that doesn't fight the world, but leans gently into it. This studio is one of many, small collectives rising quietly across the Middle East, North Africa, even parts of southern Europe, redesigning homes and schools and clinics, not with cold glass, but with warm wind. The woman offers you tea. Of course, you sip slowly and watch her adjust a piece of the model. The way she works is rhythmic, almost meditative. A whisper of clay, a scrape of wood, a pencil line tracing the invisible. She shows you. A video on a small screen. Just children sitting in a classroom laughing, a curtain fluttering in a soft breeze. You hear no fans, just the wind, doing what it's always done. You can build one anywhere, she says. The trick is not the shape, it's the attitude. The sun outside slips low, painting the model in a warm amber hue. You run your fingers over one of the tower's tiny vents and imagine the full-scale version standing tall, catching breath for a generation not yet worried about climate, but already feeling it. She tells you that some of her towers now include scent chambers, tiny clay bowls at the base that release herbal aromas, mint, basil, lavender, into the moving air, not for necessity, for joy. You laugh. Of course, what's the point of a breeze if it doesn't carry something lovely? As you finish your tea, she hands you a small card. No business logo, just a line of text, handwritten. Design for the wind and it will stay with you. You thank her and step outside, the air shifting gently against your face like a familiar dog coming to walk you home. You walk slowly. No rush now. You're beginning to realize this isn't just about towers or architecture. This has always been a story about listening to the wind, to the world, to what cools us when we're overheated and don't even know why. The last evening, you walk alone now, no guide but the breeze. It curls down alleys and around corners, past sleeping cats and shuttered doors. It seems to know where it's going, even if you don't. You arrive at the edge of the city, where the houses thin out and the land opens wide to the stars. There, nestled in the low hills, is a single tower, a windcatcher still standing, still breathing, still doing what it was built to do centuries ago. No fanfare. No spotlight. Just a simple tower rising from a small square building that has long since crumbled around it. You sit in the grass beside it, leaning against the warm stone. The air is cool now, the desert finally letting go of the heat it clutched all day. The badger exhales above you, slow, steady, indifferent to time, and you think about everything. About the scorching courtyards, the whispering houses, the figs and sherbet, the little girl in the school, the old man in the garden, the architect who builds for joy. And the wind. The invisible thread connecting it all. Some historians still debate whether the badger is more cultural than climatic, more symbolic than practical, but they miss the point. The brilliance of the windcatcher is not just that it works, it's that it cares. Its design as hospitality, as empathy, because air matters and how we move it matters even more. You close your eyes. The stars above are brighter now, somehow closer. You imagine the wind that passes over you now has also brushed across the ruins of Persepolis, across the spires of Yazd, through the fingers of builders and dreamers, traders and thieves, lovers and scholars. The same wind, passing endlessly, remembering everything. You take one deep breath, cool, clean, gentle. You're not just learning history, you're breathing it. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere far from here, in another city of glass and light, someone will open a window, not to cool a room, but to welcome the wind. The badger hums softly above you, not a machine. Not a miracle, just a tower that never stopped listening. Now the ending lullaby begins. The breeze slows, your body softens. The sky above fades from silver to deep velvet, and the edges of the story begin to blur. The walls you visited today, the ones made of clay and time, begin to fade, replaced by the quiet curve of sleep. You feel the air pass gently along your skin, not quite touch, not quite memory. Your thoughts drift like incense through a cooling shaft, spiraling upward, dissolving into hush. Let them go. There's no more journey tonight, no more towers to climb, no more stories to follow, only breath, only stillness, only a wind that knows exactly where to find you and stay.